Imagine waking up one morning, thinking your life is one thing, only to find out it was all a lie. For 20 years, Maria believed she had a loving marriage. It was a partnership built on trust, laughter, and shared dreams. They had raised two wonderful children. They had built a home together. But one day, that foundation crumbled into dust. Her husband, David, had been keeping a secret, a $12 million secret. This wasn't just about money. No, this was about a betrayal so deep it called everything into question. It was a story of a lottery ticket that didn't just buy wealth, it bought a new life, a secret life, at the expense of the woman he had promised to love forever. The shock was not just that he won. The real gut punch was that he won, and then he left. He filed for divorce, telling her he had fallen out of love. He made her believe their marriage had simply run its course. Maria spent years blaming herself, wondering what she did wrong. What could she have done differently to save their family? She replayed every argument, every cold silence, searching for a clue she must have missed. The truth, however, was far more calculated and far more devastating than she could have ever imagined. It was a secret hidden in bank accounts and legal papers, a truth that would one day come to light and shatter her world all over again. This story forces us to ask some hard questions. When does protecting yourself turn into deceiving someone else? Can a secret that big ever be justified? David had his reasons, or at least that's what he told himself. He believed he was making a difficult but necessary choice. He saw the money not as a blessing, but as a curse that would destroy everything he and Maria had built. In his mind, he was saving her from a life of greed and temptation. But in reality, he was making a decision for both of them. Without her knowledge or consent, he took away her choice, her voice, and her right to the truth. So, let's get real here. We're going to pull back the curtain on this unbelievable story. We will explore the moments that led to this life-altering decision. We will look at the love that was lost and the trust that was broken beyond repair. This is more than just a tale of a lottery winner. It's a cautionary tale about the destructive power of secrets. It's about how one person's fear can lead to another person's heartbreak. By the end, you'll have to decide for yourself. Was David a monster, or was he a man trapped by an impossible choice? Let's wake up and get to the bottom of this. 2. Before the lottery ticket, before the lies, David and Maria were the couple everyone looked up to. They met in college, two young kids with big dreams and not much else. Their love story was simple and beautiful. They married a few years later in a small ceremony, surrounded by close friends and family. Their life wasn't extravagant, but it was rich in what mattered most: love, respect, and a genuine partnership. They were a team. When David's construction business struggled, Maria took on extra shifts as a nurse to help make ends meet. When Maria's mother fell ill, David was there, fixing things around the house and making sure she had everything she needed. They built their life brick by brick, celebrating small victories and weathering storms together. Their two children, a son and a daughter, grew up in a home filled with laughter and stability. Friday nights were for pizza and movies, and summers were for camping trips in their old, reliable station wagon. David was a hard-working man, known for his steady hands and quiet strength. Maria was the heart of the family, a warm and nurturing presence who held everything together. They were the definition of ordinary, in the most beautiful way. No one, not even they themselves, could have predicted the earthquake that was about to shake their world to its very core. Their friends saw them as the gold standard for marriage. They rarely argued, and when they did, they always found their way back to each other. They had plans for the future. They dreamed of retiring, maybe buying a small cabin by a lake where David could fish and Maria could read. They talked about the grandchildren they hoped to one day spoil. These were not the dreams of millionaires. They were the humble, heartfelt dreams of two people who had built a life they were proud of. There was no sign of trouble, no hint of the darkness that was lurking just around the corner, waiting for the right moment to strike. Looking back, Maria would later say, those years were the happiest of her life. She felt seen, loved, and secure. She trusted David implicitly. He was her rock, her confidant, her other half. The idea that he could be capable of such profound deception was simply unthinkable. It was like trying to imagine the sun rising in the west. Their life was a testament to commitment and shared values. Or so she thought. The truth was that beneath this perfect surface, a seed of doubt was about to be planted, one that would grow into a tangled web of lies, secrets, and devastating consequences. It was a Tuesday, just like any other Tuesday. David stopped at a local convenience store to grab a coffee on his way to a job site. On a whim, he bought a lottery ticket. He stuck it in the glove compartment of his truck and forgot all about it. A week went by. He heard on the radio that the winning ticket was sold at that very store and still hadn't been claimed. Curiosity got the better of him. During his lunch break, he pulled out the crumpled ticket, his hands greasy from his work. He smoothed it out on the dashboard and began matching the numbers one by one. The first number matched, then the second. His heart started to pound in his chest, a low drumbeat that grew louder with each successive match. Third number, fourth, fifth. He felt a wave of dizziness wash over him. It couldn't be. People like him didn't win the lottery. He checked the numbers again, his eyes scanning back and forth between the ticket and the newspaper clipping he'd bought. All 6 numbers matched. $12 million. The words seemed to float in the air in front of him, unreal and impossible. He felt a surge of pure, unadulterated joy, a feeling so intense it almost felt like panic. He wanted to shout, to scream, to call Maria. But then, as quickly as the joy came, another feeling crept in: fear. It was a cold, sharp fear that pierced through the excitement. $12 million. The number echoed in his mind, no longer a symbol of freedom, but a harbinger of chaos. He thought of the stories he'd heard on the news: lottery winners whose lives were ruined, families torn apart by greed, friends turning into enemies, people coming out of the woodwork with their hands out. He pictured his simple, happy life with Maria and the kids, and he saw it all disintegrating under the weight of that much money. The cabin by the lake, the quiet retirement, it all seemed to evaporate. He sat there in his truck for over an hour, the engine off, the world outside moving on without him. His mind was racing, playing out a dozen different scenarios. He could tell Maria, they could celebrate, hire financial advisors, and make a plan. But what if it changed them? What if it changed her? He had seen what wealth did to people. It made them suspicious, greedy, and unhappy. He loved the Maria he had now, the nurse who worked long hours, the mother who packed school lunches, the wife who fell asleep with her head on his shoulder. He was terrified of losing that woman to a life of luxury and excess. In that moment, a terrible idea began to form in his mind: a secret. The decision to hide the winnings wasn't made in a single dramatic moment. Honestly, it was more like a slow, creeping poison that seeped into David's thoughts over several days. He started to rationalize his silence, convincing himself he was doing it for Maria, to protect her from the pressures and temptations that came with sudden wealth. He kept telling himself that their love, so pure and simple, just couldn't survive the strain of $12 million. In his mind, it was an act of preservation, a painful sacrifice he had to make to keep the memory of their happy life intact. He would be the villain in her story, but, weirdly, he also saw himself as her silent protector. The guilt was immediate and all-consuming. Every time Maria smiled at him, every time she talked about their future, a sharp pain shot through his chest. He was living a double life. By day, he was the same hard-working husband she had always known. But inside, he was a millionaire, plotting his escape. He started to distance himself emotionally, building a wall around his heart brick by brick. He became quiet and withdrawn, his laughter less frequent. He knew he had to create a reason for the divorce, a narrative that would make sense to her, even if it broke her heart. He had to make her believe he no longer loved her. He began to manufacture arguments, picking fights over small, insignificant things. He would come home late from work, when in reality, he was meeting with lawyers and financial planners, setting up secret accounts and trusts. The planning was meticulous and cold. He was dismantling their life together with the same precision he used to build a house. Each lie he told was a nail in the coffin of their marriage. He felt like a fraud in his own home, a stranger to the woman who slept beside him every night. The weight of the secret was crushing, but the fear of the alternative felt even heavier. He told himself this was the only way. If he just gave her the money, their lives would be thrown into chaos. Relatives they hadn't heard from in years would appear. Strangers would hound them. Their children would grow up entitled and lose their work ethic. By divorcing her and providing a generous but not life-changing settlement, he believed he was giving her a chance at a normal life. He would take on the burden of the wealth and its associated problems alone. It was a twisted, misguided form of love, a plan born from fear and executed with devastating deception. He was saving his family by destroying it. One evening, after the kids were in bed, David sat Maria down at the kitchen table. The same table where they had shared thousands of meals, celebrated birthdays, and helped with homework. The air was thick with a tension she couldn't understand. She thought he was going to tell her he was sick, or that his business was failing again. She braced herself for bad news, ready to face it with him, as a team. But the words that came out of his mouth were something she could have never prepared for. "Maria," he said, his voice flat and devoid of emotion. "I want a divorce." The words hung in the air, sharp and unbelievable. Maria stared at him, searching his face for a sign that he was joking, that this was some kind of cruel prank. But his eyes were cold and distant. She asked why, her voice barely a whisper. He gave her a string of vague, hurtful cliches. "I'm not happy anymore. I feel trapped. I think we've grown apart. I don't love you anymore." Each phrase was a dagger to her heart. This wasn't the man she had married. The David she knew would never give up on them, not without a fight. He refused to go to counseling, refused to even try. It was over. The divorce proceedings were swift and brutal. David was strangely generous with the settlement, at least by their standards. He gave her the house, a decent amount of savings, and promised substantial child support. At the time, Maria saw it as a gesture of guilt, a final act of a man who knew he was tearing their family apart for no good reason. She was too consumed by grief and confusion to question it. She was in survival mode, trying to hold herself together for her children, who were heartbroken and bewildered. Their father, their hero, was suddenly a stranger who didn't want them anymore. Maria spent the next few years trying to piece her life back together. The pain was a constant companion. She replayed their last few months together endlessly, searching for the moment it all went wrong. She blamed herself. Was she not attentive enough? Had she let herself go? Did she stop being the woman he fell in love with? Her self-esteem was shattered. The man she had trusted with her entire life had abandoned her without a real explanation, leaving a gaping wound that refused to heal. She had lost her husband, her best friend, and her future, all at once. And she had no idea why. 4 years passed. Life moved on, as it always does. But for Maria, a shadow of confusion lingered. She had built a new life for herself and her children. She continued her work as a nurse, finding purpose in caring for others. Her children were older now, navigating their teenage years with a quiet resilience that made her proud. Yet, the question of why never fully disappeared. It was a ghost that haunted her quiet moments, a puzzle with a missing piece. David had moved out of state shortly after the divorce. His contact was minimal, limited to brief phone calls with the kids and the timely arrival of child support checks. He was a ghost in their lives. Then came the letter. It was a piece of misdirected mail, a financial statement from an investment firm addressed to David, but sent to her old address, their family home. Normally, she would have forwarded it without a second thought. But something made her pause. The name of the investment firm sounded exclusive, not the kind of place a simple contractor would use. A flicker of curiosity, or maybe intuition, made her open it. Her hands trembled as she unfolded the paper. She didn't understand all the financial jargon, but she understood the number at the bottom of the page. A number with 7 zeros. The world tilted on its axis. Millions. David had millions of dollars. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of it. An inheritance? A secret business deal? Then, a memory surfaced, faint and distant. A news report about an unclaimed lottery ticket, bought at the very convenience store David used to frequent. The timing. The sudden, inexplicable divorce. the cold, detached way he had left. It all clicked into place with a horrifying, sickening clarity. The puzzle piece she had been missing for 4 years wasn't just missing. It had been deliberately hidden from her. The initial shock gave way to a cold, hard anger. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was a calculated, cruel deception. The pain of the divorce was nothing compared to this. He hadn't fallen out of love with her. He had traded her and their family for money. All those years she had spent blaming herself. All the nights she had cried herself to sleep. It was all based on a lie. He had let her believe she was the problem, that their 2 decades of love meant nothing, all while he was secretly sitting on a fortune that belonged to both of them. The heartbreak was replaced by a burning sense of injustice. Maria confronted David. She didn't scream or cry. She flew to the city where he lived and met him in a sterile coffee shop. The financial statement laid out between them like a verdict. Cornered and with nowhere left to hide, David finally confessed everything. He explained his fear, his misguided logic, his twisted attempt to protect her. He told her he saw the money as a poison, and he chose to sever their connection to save her from it. He truly believed he was doing the right thing, that the pain of the divorce would be less than the pain of a life destroyed by wealth. He saw himself not as a villain, but as a tragic hero, making a noble sacrifice. But his explanation fell on deaf ears. Maria didn't see a hero. She saw a coward, a man who was so afraid of a potential problem that he created a definite and devastating one. He didn't protect her. He robbed her. He robbed her of her husband, her peace of mind, and her right to choose her own path. He robbed their children of their father. The money was community property. He had not only deceived her emotionally, but had also committed fraud. The legal battle that followed was messy and public, reopening all the old wounds and creating new ones. The court eventually awarded Maria half of the remaining winnings, but no amount of money could undo the damage. The aftermath was a landscape of broken relationships. The money that David had tried to control ended up controlling him anyway. He lived a lonely life in a big, empty house, estranged from his children, who could not forgive his deception. He had the financial freedom he thought he wanted, but he had lost everything that truly mattered. Maria, on the other hand, used her share of the money wisely. She set up college funds for her children and invested in a secure future. But more importantly, she found a different kind of wealth, the strength of her own resilience and the unwavering love of her kids. She had been through hell, but she had emerged whole. In the end, this story is a powerful, painful lesson about trust. Trust is the bedrock of any relationship, and once it's broken, it's nearly impossible to rebuild. David's secret, born from fear, created a chasm that could never be bridged. He thought he was controlling his destiny, but his choices led to the very outcome he feared: a broken family and a life of regret.